Hello, good evening. Welcome again to Books and Bush Tea. I am your host, and I was just telling my guests that I always forget to introduce myself because I just assume people know at this point. My name is Aniki, and I'm your host at Books and Bush Tea. I have my Bush Tea ready to go. I hope that you have yours, and we're going to spend a lovely evening today together talking about books. As you know, this is our month, our International Women's Month, and we've been spending to get time with women readers as well as women writers. I think the first episode of this month, we had Dr. Stephanie Fullerton Cooper join us, and we talked about why we need women to write. It was awesome. It was one of the best episodes that I have learned so much from since we've done this. We also then had last week some of our favorite guests come back and talk about our favorite female characters. And this week, we're going to have a lot of fun because this week we're talking about lifelong reading. Lifelong reading. You know, there's an assumption because Cayman was a very, very sleepy little place that didn't have a lot of resources when back in the day. And, you know, there was a lot of scarcity is probably the word that I would say. But one of the things that I have always been amazed by in the stories that I've heard from my elders has been that books have always been involved. Books have always been involved. Some form of reading has always been involved. My grandmother could recite to me poems that she learned in primary school as a little girl. And, you know, I spent some time with Captain Paul Hurlston before he passed. And he could recite to me poems that he had learned in his childhood and tell me about the reading that he had done throughout his life. So, you know, reading has always been a part of the Caymanian story. But, you know, before I get into our guests, who are awesome, I'm super excited to have them because I'm bringing you kind of into my own living room and my own reading conversations that are just a part of my life. This is a very intimate and very special episode for me. But, you know, I always kind of catch up with how my reading week has gone and ask you questions. You know, if you have any book requests, book recommendation requests. We had a guest, a viewer a couple of weeks ago who asked us for a recommendation and gave us one of the movies that they really, really liked. And we gave them a list the following week because we'd done some research on the kind of books that they would like. So just a quick reminder, if you want a book recommendation, you can always reach out to us at Books and Bush Tea. You can ask us any questions, either on our email, which I'm going to send you, you know, you'll see it at the ticker at the very bottom of the screen right now. And there is also, you can also send us a message on WhatsApp. And the number for WhatsApp is 925-8521. And I also have, you can also just follow us on Instagram. Instagram is probably where we are having a lot of activity. We're having so much fun on Instagram because we're part of a much larger community. The book community is massive. It is all over the world. And we have so many people that we interact with on social media, locally and abroad. And we're getting book recommendations and so on. So, you know, feel free to just jump on and send us a note. Find us on Instagram. We're actually live on Instagram right now as well on the Books and Bush Tea channel, as well as on CMR. So we spend time with our audience overseas, as well as with our CMR audience, which is, of course, our home. You know, our home is in Cayman. So we are excited this week. I'm excited for a number of reasons because my own reading is going to have a wonderful week because I'm reading, first of all, a lovely book. I mentioned last week that I'd started reading this book called Villains and Virtues. My favorite sleepy time reading is a book called Between by L.L. Starling. And I have read Between. I don't even know, you know, if this was a carpet that I walked, I would have wore the treads right out because I listen to Between to go to sleep almost every night. So it's on a loop. I read the whole book. And let me tell you something, that's like a 20-hour book. So if you consider that I read that sometimes 3 times in 2 months. So I reached out to my Reddit community because it's a fantasy and I think it's a cozy fantasy. And there's a couple of subreddits on Reddit. I was like, you know what? I'm in love with this book. And every time I put it down, I just need something else that is similar to it. And I finally got a recommendation called Villains and Virtues. And it's a series, and it's a complete series as far as I'm aware. So I'm on book 2 of Villains and Virtues, and it's called Summoned to the Wilds. And it is silly and it is hilarious. The villain, or the shadow daddy type stuff, it is not a spicy book. It is so lighthearted and funny. And even the villains are like, they're so clumsy, they trip over themselves. Like it's the kind of book that is very heartwarming and makes you giggle, right? It's very whimsical. So I highly recommend this series, Villains and Virtues. But the thing that really has me excited this week is that this week we are seeing the Project Hail Mary movie. And I cannot tell you how excited I am. I am so excited by this book. So at the beginning of the year, I would have shared with you that my partner and I were reading this book that he's in love with called Project Hail Mary. And we wanted to complete it before the movie came out because we knew the movie was coming out. And Ryan Gosling is starring in this movie. And I think it comes to the cinema tonight. So we're going to miss the first night. But trust me, this weekend is not passing before we see this. And it made me think about just how in love with a movie a book reader can be. My social media right now for Books and Bush Tea is full of people who are so excited about this movie coming out. And some of them have been so lucky. They've been able to see the pre-screening or the early screening of Project Hail Mary, and they're saying it's true to the book. And immediately I get even more excited. Apparently the music is on point. So Ryan Gosling is a scientist who is, and I'm trying not to give away spoilers, who wakes up on a random place that he then learns is a spaceship. And the Earth is actually in danger because something is eating at the sun. And so they send the Project Hail Mary, which is a ship, out into the universe to find a solution to what is happening to Earth, because life on Earth will end in 30 years if this is not handled. And he is fascinating. And I don't want to say any more because it's so good, but I highly recommend it. But the takeaway for Books and Bush Tea, what's really relevant to us, is just how much book lovers love stories. We love stories, and we get deep into a story. And I'm thinking about both Between and Project Hail Mary. When you're in love with a story, there is an immersion that happens in the reading that you don't get from the movie. You get to experience the story through the minds of the people involved, of the characters involved. You get to experience the story through the narrator who sees above all of the people. So they're seeing things that the characters aren't seeing. And I'm so curious to hear how this story is going to be adapted, because the majority of this story has one human being in it. It's kind of like that one Castaway where there's like not a single word is said in most of the movie because he's alone on a ship by himself or on an island by himself. In this instance, I am dying to see how this is going to be adapted. So being in love with the story, you then jump into the movie, and it's the icing on the cake because now you have images that you can match to you're just enriching something that you've already experienced deeply. So highly recommend the book. If you are a quick reader, now is a good time to start before the movie. And if not, after seeing this movie, if you fell in love with the story, which a lot of moviegoers are doing, I highly recommend going back into that world and spending more time with Ryland Grace and Rocky. All right, so that's enough about what's going on in the reading world today. I am also super excited because in Women's Month, we are celebrating all levels of womanhood. And I've already raised the bone that I have to pick with the theme Gift Gain, and we won't talk too much about that tonight. But I'm very excited because the ladies that are in this episode are some of the examples of womanhood in my life who have taught me a lot about leadership as a woman. not leading like a man in a woman's body, but being a leader as a woman. They have also taught me how to continue growing, that growing is a lifelong experience. They have taught me also a love of stories. Funny enough, there's so much shared history in the reading space with the ladies that I'm having us be joined by. So the first person I'd like to introduce you tonight is Miss Angela Martins, and she's no stranger to most of the viewers today. Miss Angela is an ambivert by nature, and she enjoys quiet times at home with her Shih Tzu mixed fur boy in this particular chapter of her life. On the professional side of her life, she is a retired civil servant of 34 years who worked across multiple units of government, all focused largely on people-centered spaces. I first would have come across Miss Angela and the name Miss Angela Martins when she was in education. Across these spaces, she focused on three things: delivering high-value mandated policy outcomes beyond stated requirements, leaving staff and work units better than she found them, while committed to a communications approach which kept the public engaged with the work being done on their behalf. To this latter point, she was always clear about who she worked for, the people of the Cayman Islands. Her life was so much more than what's known about her professionally. Miss Angela was the first president of the Business and Professional Women's Club and the first president of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I think that's no longer in existence at the moment. But she has mentored several young adults and supported several primary school students with reading. She served as the executive director of Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Cayman Islands, which later became One-to-One. And here she was privileged to work with many men and women across Cayman who volunteered to serve as mentors to a never-ending list of young people who were waiting to be matched. She continues to maintain relationships with the souls that she was involved with. She has served her church in many capacities and continues to serve as needed. Finally, very close to her heart is the work that she's done with Samaritan's Purse, who brings babies and children here for heart surgeries. And Miss Angela is the mother of 3 children who kept her curious yet focused. And if you know her children, you know that they are very bright minds that must have kept her going. She enjoys spending time with them, with friends, visiting seniors in the community, traveling, and her hobbies: water fitness classes, reading, and painting, while struggling with her attempts to take back up crochet. God bless her. Let's welcome Miss Angela. Hello, Miss Angela.
Hi. I am going to get that crochet right.
Oh, listen, it's never too late to pick up a crochet hook. As you know, our next guest will also say the same. The second guest that we have on tonight is Dr. Hazel Brown. And for those of you who don't know this is my mom. Dr. Brown often says she has no memory that predates reading. Inspired by her grandmother, who read to her daily as a child, she developed a lifelong love of books, reading everything that came into her reach, even when resources were limited. She then passed that on to my brother and myself, and she read to us every night. Either she or my dad would read to us every single night as children. Today, she is an eclectic reader, moving easily between fantasy, romance, and mystery, while also engaging deeply with personal development, leadership, biography, and spiritual writing. For her, reading is both exploration and grounding, a way to understand people, expand perspective, and grow in wisdom. While she's best known for her professional leadership in healthcare, Dr. Brown is also a passionate advocate for child and youth literacy. Through her work with Rotary, community reading programs, and family-led book initiatives, we've had like book drives over Christmas in our family where we like collect books and hand them out to kids in our lives. And it was, we've had multiple things where we just spontaneously, just from our love of books, sharing that with our community. And she has been a leader of that. And she has helped place books in the hands of children and has mentored many young people along the way. She's also probably the most masterful crochet person in Cayman. She still works in thread, Miss Angela. Do you know that? Hi, Mom. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
She still works in thread, Miss Angela. She's not just doing crochet with like yarn, which is what novices like myself tend to do.
All right. Conversation offline will be held.
For
Absolutely.
sure. For sure. So, ladies, I am so glad to have you because in the conversations that we have had, I have learned so much about what reading was like in your childhoods, which would have been a generation or two before mine. And there is something really beautiful about the story. And we have someone already coming on to say good night, ladies. We've got Alfred saying good night. Now,
Good night, Alfred. Hello.
so we're I want to hear from you what I always call this like the reader origin story. Not just though in your case, I don't want to just hear about your like the books that got you going, right? But I want to hear what it was like to be a reader in Cayman in the 60s and the 70s and so on. Let and either one of you can start, but I know that this is an interesting story for all of us tonight.
Well, I had the library in Georgetown, and I also had a clarity that if I did all the chores I was supposed to do, then I could go to the library, but don't let the sun hit the horizon. And so I would go to the Georgetown Library and read anything I could get my hands on. But in particular, every 3 months, the newspaper would come from the UK, and it was about that thick. It was a book, fairly big book, 11 by 17. I guess they would call it A3 or A4, whatever that size is. And it had a yellow cover because it was all newsprint. But I would read it from front to back. And one of the things that I remember fondly, it was information about what's happening in Scotland and Wales and the Cotswold and all this. But it was all interesting and new to me. But I remember continuing to see stories on Dame Margot Fontaine and Swan Lake, and what an amazing dancer, ballet dancer she was. And this young girl got fascinated by this and made this commitment that when I grew up, I was going to go to London and I was going to go and see this ballerina dance. And I did. And the other book that I would put into the mix is not a book from the library, although there were lots of books at the library, but it was the Longman's Geography book. Here I learned so much about everywhere else except Cayman. And there's a line in the Longman's Geography book that I remember until today. And it's alpine flowers growing in the frigid mountain waters. And I was to go to the Rockies and to see on the side of the moraine the alpine flowers growing, blooming in that water, and that line comes back to me. So there were just loads of books. I didn't know genre or any. I just picked up a book, whatever I could get my hands on. But also Miss Iva Panton would say, Annan, it's dark. I got to go home, darling. You got to go home too. And that meant
he was a librarian.
But yeah, it was a library, and whatever the Georgetown Library had, I consumed it. I think that's the word.
Yeah, it's almost like going through it like a fire, right? Yeah. Miss Isla Panton, you said her name was?
Iva Panton.
Iva, and she was a librarian?
That would have been all those Johnson boys, their grandmother. You know who I mean? I can't think of their names right now. But yeah, Miss Iva was their grandmother, and she was the lady that ran the library. And so whenever I came, she would keep the newspaper for me. Wow. She always say, Anna, this came and I kept it for you. That's what they called me at the time. And I just sat there and just consumed this thing.
Oh my goodness. So you had this Georgetown experience of being able to be in walking distance of the library, and you just had to get home before sundown.
That was important, though, the getting home.
Oh, yeah, of course. We're talking about real darkness. We're talking about real darkness, even in Georgetown back then, right?
One day I did not get there before it got dark.
Uh-oh.
And I will not discuss on here what happened.
Fair enough.
It happened once. It only happened once.
Got it, loud and clear. Right, I can hear a switch. So, Mom, So I can't call you Dr. Brown. Mom, tell us about your experience because you would have been in a different district and you'd have had a very different surrounding because and just kind of paint for us what it would have been like to even the relationship between the districts between Bordentown and say Georgetown at the time.
Well, growing up in Bordentown, there weren't any cars, right? There were two cars in the district that I can remember in the earlier days. Um, and, Mommy went to town once a month to cash her allotment.
Mm-hmm.
And she had to book passage with Mr. Logan or Marston to go to town. So we didn't go to town often. During primary school, we didn't go to town. You went to town if you were going to the doctor, or that was probably about it. But the primary school in those days, Bontown Primary School was in the town hall. There was no library. We didn't have those things. Um, but like I said, I don't remember a time when I did not read. Those years, I'm thinking, according to my mother, I was reading fluently by the time I was 3 or 4. I don't know, that may be an exaggeration, but anyway,
She could tell
I'll
us the
take her
story.
word for it. Um, but I would read everything. I would read the soup can label. I would read. We all learned to read the Bible. That was your reading book. You learn to read the Bible, and then you learned with Dick and Jane, and then you learned with in the Town Primary School days. There was a Children's Own, which was a children's newspaper that came from Jamaica. I don't remember how often. I don't remember, but it was a little green newspaper, and I would read that from front to back. Um, Seeing the love of reading in me, most of my prizes, whether through church or school, were
Mm-hmm.
books. So I,
Wow.
I would be given books. And I had an old aunt, Aunt Lou, would
Mm-hmm.
make sure that I always had, stuff to read, largely around the church, right? Because she was my spiritual mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my mom used to read a little. You may remember these, Angela, A Woman's Own. There were some little booklets, like little 5 by 7, very, very thin little booklets with love stories. They would have multiple love stories. I used to hide
Right.
and read them, but Mama wouldn't allow me to read them, so I used to have to hide when she wasn't at home and read them. And in once I went to John Gray, well, it wasn't John Gray High School at that time. It was secondary grammar. Quick, soon became the comprehensive school,
Caymanian
but
High School, the
and then
precursor to
Cayman
that.
High School.
Mhm.
It They had a little library, but it wasn't much about borrowing. It was about going in there and sitting and reading. And a 10-year-old and 11-year-old, you didn't have the interest in going and sitting in there to read in this. And the books weren't really that attractive. But my textbooks, I read all my textbooks. And then sometime, I think it was either in 72 or 73, there was a mobile library service, a little cream colored van. It came to Town on a Tuesday afternoon. Now, I don't remember if it was once a month or once a week, but you can bet that I went to the library van every time it arrived in Town. I can feel that pile of books as I was going home with them.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
between that and then the 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 church, I had access to a lot. I remember early on in primary school, I was given a dictionary, and I would read the dictionary. Until today, I'll read a dictionary. I love reading the dictionary, and it's I I understand now also that I have a lot of reading on my biological father's side, a whole lot. Like, he was a big reader. My mom's father was a big reader. He also, so I had a lot of readers in my bloodline, and
mhm.
in my family of my family of growing up. I wish we could bring back the library van, but nowadays we have libraries in every district. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I right now I take my grandchildren to the library and they love it. We can't stay very long with Nolan, but because he tears down the library, but we still take him there so he can get accustomed to it.
Well,
I
that's so
don't want to miss,
special.
I
Go
don't
ahead,
want to
Miss
miss
Anne.
people that we talk about reading. Some
Mhm.
of the things when we didn't have books, and I'm sure this was true for Hazel, we had Montgomery Ward, we had
Yes,
National,
yes, I forgot.
and we would read them and make
Yes.
orders out, fill out the form and everything, um, from front to back. We didn't have
Hmm.
no money to send them anywhere, but we looked at every single thing and made out orders in them.
Hmm.
What is
Again,
Montgomery Ward? Tell us about that.
Montgomery Ward was again like a Target, I
Like
suppose.
a Sears and Roebuck.
There's
It
a
was
Oh,
Roebuck a
Montgomery
long
Ward and
time ago.
Sears and Roebuck
Um,
and National
and
Belisas.
National Belahess, that was another one. Um, but these are, they would come, and certainly my grandmother had a little shop, so she would get them and the ship come in. And I would sit down and take the order form and go through and make up my order and figure out everything. It never went anywhere, but you read every single thing about the um, the item you wanted to buy, and uh, you didn't have no computer to look up anything on it, but
mhm, mhm,
you know.
mhm.
So it's, I think the difference between today and then was, and you said it so well, Hazel, is that we read everything, whether it was the oh my goodness, the oats box that had the glass,
Yes.
or
Mm-hmm.
the soap box that came with the towels.
Mm-hmm.
We read everything on the labels of these boxes. So we learned to read outside of school in significant kinds of ways. Yeah, we had Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys, but that was much older girl. That
Yes.
wasn't them early days.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. And then Cherry Ames. Cause I remember Mama had Cherry Ames as well. Cause I actually got some of her old Cherry Ames books when I was a teenager and fell in love with those older series, you know? Yeah. Oh man, but you're really painting a picture for us because I'm getting that it's almost like the universe provides, right? But when would you say was the first time that there was a bookstore that you can remember in Cayman, like a
But
bookstore?
but before we go
Georgetown,
there, I
it
think we
was
need to set something else in context that we did not have electric lights.
one lamp on
One lamp.
Grandad.
So you read during the day unless you could hide under the sheet with the flashlight. If you could
I
get
did
hold of
that, got double
flashlight.
that too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What was that? I didn't hear you so clear.
No, she said hide under the sheet. I would bring like 4 or 5 books from the library, and
Mhm.
and I would send me up in the house to do something or tell me I was supposed to go to bed, and I would take flashlight and hide it under the sheet, as
Yeah.
Hazel said, and be reading. And that was not what I was told to do.
Mm-hmm.
But what I know as a bookstore, and this is a terrible way to say it, but it was and I can't think of the man now, but it was the Dummies bookstore on the waterfront, and they had books there, and that's where I could go and get books. And they
I,
didn't.
I only remember the Hampstead that was opposite
That was
Merriam's.
after the fact. That was after the
Yeah, I
fact.
don't remember the other one.
The Hampstead came down the road. Um, but these, I don't know, and I hate to say what I just said because that's the word we would have used back then. But they
Yeah.
were, but they couldn't speak, but they had.
Oh,
It
these
was,
are people that. I see what you're saying. So they were mute.
they were mute, and on sadly, we call them dummies, but
Yeah.
it
But
was on
that's how the store would have been known, the dumbest bookstore.
Yeah.
past. It was
Lord,
West
came
Wind
on.
Building. You went past West Wind Building, and it was like you had to go upstairs, up the steps, 4 or 5 up the steps, and there it was the bookstore. It was a small
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware, but of course we didn't come to
Wow.
town, like I said.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I got to ride to the bank to pick up the check, so I got to know stuff.
not me.
Oh my goodness, I can just see you all now, as young girls and not roads that were necessarily paved because a lot of this would have been dirt road, right? Mar road
Sand roads, sand roads.
Sand roads, yeah.
Yeah.
But the
I think
image of it is
the
just
important
so,
piece
it's so
about
interesting.
I think the important piece about our origin story is that we were curious about everything.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as it had some writing on it, we
Oh,
read it. Um,
my
and
mother had what she used to call a doctor book. I just remember that. She used to have a doctor book. I need to go look that up and see what that doctor book was. But it was a book that had all kinds of conditions and home remedies and whatnot for it. So I never even remembered that until now. But I was very little when I was reading the doctor book.
no, I was reading that almanac. Almanac.
Yes, the almanac too,
Yeah.
and
And
Reader's
everything in
Digest.
it was
Reader's
Readers,
Digest
I
we used
was
to
waiting
get.
for Reader's Digest.
We used to get those
Reader's
sometimes.
Digest came when I got a little older, but
Yeah, sometimes.
the almanac, I used to believe in that. So again, that
Yes, and had lots of interesting stuff in it.
yeah, it did. It did. It did.
Yeah, because I would cover the astrology and some of the superstitions around planting and all those types of
Yes.
stuff too, and the phases and moon and all that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So even to
lots
this
of
day,
stuff
I
in
love
it.
the almanac.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I am a generation later, but I remember going to Edmar's and finding the comic books and the Reader's Digest. I fell in love with Reader's Digest as a child because mom was bringing them home, and I mom would read them and dad would read them, but I always wanted to be the first person to peel. Remember, it used to have a cover, like a sheet on the front that had the glue.
Hmm.
Like it's like the sticky glue, and you would peel that off. I would play with the sticky glue because I was dying to see what was underneath it. Oh my goodness! So there's such relationships that we have, tactile memories too, that we have with these books. And I'm hearing it with your the Montgomery, and the newspapers, right? These are just
Oh, yeah.
these are relationships that we built with books as children. But I'm curious, what would you say would have been your favorite book as a young person?
Oh, I can talk about mine. Mine was about an of course, again, this may not be politically correct language, but it was a white boy in the U.S. who was kidnapped by an Indian tribe and raised as the son of the chief, and his
Mhm.
name was Swift Arrow.
I remember this
And
book.
I read that book over and over and over. I got it as a prize in church at one point. I was very young. And I just read that book to death. I just loved that story of the resilience of this young man and how he coped with the change in culture, how he grew to be, as a son of the chief, he had to excel, and what it cost him to excel, and then how he got away, and because he had excelled in all of their cultural practices, he could more readily get away, and how he returned to his family and got reintegrated. I mean, today it would be, considered not a very appropriate story,
But
but
I don't
but
know,
it
because I actually think it was a very appropriate story because he fell in love with his family, his adopted family, if I remember right. You read this to me, or I read it as a child, Swift Arrow, and there was
mhm.
another one that was similar called Spotted Boy and the Comanches,
Right, Smarty Boy and the
right?
Comanches, but Swift Arrow was the first one I got. Yeah,
Oh my goodness, mommy, I forgot that name.
yeah,
That was such a different world that you just moved into when
yes.
you read. I mean, that was such a stunning story. I thought, I don't know that it would be politically incorrect necessarily. I hate when people call books politically incorrect because I believe that books are a product of their time, and they have a like, there's a lot of talk about what was that one? This the one that is like the one about the South. That I tell you that I explain Nanny to me, explain my grandmother to me.
Yeah.
Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind is considered to be this awful book, and the truth is, I think it demonstrates a way of thinking, and I think it does it very neutrally, in a way that it explains the way that things became that what they were. I have always loved that book, even though I have never ever been able to come to peace with the concepts of like slavery and even the creation of the clan and all that. But it was so fascinating. If we don't read these other perspectives, then how do we ever learn from them? You know, how do we ever get to
How
I
do
don't
we
know.
navigate where we are? The
Yeah.
thing is that if we forget where we're coming from, we're bound to return, right?
Yeah, but I actually loved that book. I would love to read that again and see it through the lens of an adult and really see whether or not this is something that, you know, I'd like to look at it through that lens. Spotted Boy and the Comanche.
The other thing for me is that
Smith Darrow.
I did not like comics.
Okay, say more.
And comics were available to us. All of my friends were reading comics. I have never liked comic strips. I like the narrative. I like the wordiness of it. I just enjoyed that rather than, you know, speech bubbles and trying to interpret what's in front of you, because of course that's all open to interpretation, isn't it, what you're seeing there?
Yeah.
But that was, you know, as I've grown older, I thought, well, that's really interesting that you never really took off with comic books.
What about you, Miss Angela? What would you say would be your favorite?
I was thinking about that, and I think what I remember more are the name of authors, like Enid Blyton.
I read all her books, everything.
And I left here when I was 12, which really made a difference in what I read pre and post 12 years old. But here, Grandma my birthday's in December, so Grandma would bring, because she had a shop, she would bring, my gift would be a book. And so I remember reading everything in the Sun that Enid Blyton wrote.
Yes.
But then when I went to Canada, I got this fascination with World War II, and that became a different kind of direction for me. And then started reading, you know, just everything I could get my hands on to try and understand man's inhumanity to man.
Yes.
Which was very different than, it's almost like I left here as a child. And then when I went there and got into high school and what have you, my reading took a different direction.
But it does, doesn't it? Like it transitions as you grow too, and you're with exposure and maturity. And you know, I love that you're both describing this journey, because I feel like it is a journey. We have this, and I feel like it's also one of those places. Reading is one of those places where we get to be our most authentic, because it is so private. It is only for us. It's only what is entering us and us processing. So there's no shame. There's no space for, like, you know what I mean? There's no space for interruption of your own interpretation and your own development and your own path. So you could go down these rabbit holes. Like I went down a whole rabbit hole about American history, like an alternative American history to what is super popular. I'm still down in that rabbit hole. But then I also had this huge rabbit hole around mythology. Like I read everything I could get my hands on from different cultures around mythology. And so it's, you know, it's almost like each one of us chooses a journey, and then it leads to the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, which is kind of like what I'm curious about now. Like, what can you see has been, not just from the time you were young, but even coming up to today? What do you see have been like the places that your reading has taken you to?
Ooh,
that's a big question.
What I really liked was Hazel's little bio, because I wanted to say ditto. Because when I started thinking about which books, and I've got a bunch of them here, what I talk about tonight, one of the first things I recognized was eclectic is the word. But I think I would frame the things that interest me as biographies, fiction, but a large piece around understanding the female psyche. And so I've done a lot of, and not consciously, that's the other piece, but just real interesting. And and then I want to draw out one that really spoke to me so strongly, and that's Michael Holding's book, Why We Kneel and How We Rise. And
Oh, wow.
in 2020, when George Floyd was another statistic, Michael started this book, and I got a copy of it. And you have a number of major sports athletes who have contributed to this, but the whole idea of understanding racism and the importance of us speaking up and of us being present and of us acknowledging that it is real. Michael just, it's one of those things where and then you get into it. And I read this chapter and then I have to read it again because, as you know, I have to stop.
And that's Michael Holding that lives here, right? The cricketer?
Yeah. But it is an amazing book. And in fact, I'm waiting for another book to be able to give to one of my cousin's son, because I think as a young man, he needs to read something like this. But yeah, my direction has really been all over the place. But I mean, I like that.
Yeah.
You know, I've got, and then I will go back and read a book I've read already.
Yes.
You know, and there's one I've read already, which is What I Know Now, Letters to My Younger Self. This is Madeleine Albright to Maya Angelou to, you know, just a whole bunch of fabulous women.
Yeah. It sounds like you like anthologies as well, eh? Like
I do.
with multiple contributors.
This is one that I've sort of picked up again and started reading again. Or Brene Brown. She's one of my people. And I come back to In the Company of Women. And this is 100 women. It's a single page on each one, but it's just fabulous just to them as inspirations and equally advice on where they're going with their lives. You know, or Anne Lamont, Hallelujah Anyway. And this is all about mercy, being able to live in this space and give others grace, be presence. So yeah, or the lady that I have so much respect for, Jacinda Ardern.
Oh, I love her as a leader. Yes,
as a leader.
And Claudia Steinbaum. I'm dying for her to write a book.
Kind of power. And these are books that I have read. 100 Women, In the Company of Women, I haven't read. And one that I am reading now is Imani Perry, which is a young Black author in the US. But again, it's called Black in Blues. And it's amazing because it's looking at the fact of where the color blue permeates the Blackness of African Americans and where that's come from historically. It's fabulous. It's just fabulous. And I'm just, how a color tells a story of my people. No, it's
okay. That sounds really good.
That I'm truly all over the place, but as I am in South Korea, and all caught up in Pachinko and what happened to her. And again, that has to do with my keen interest in understanding other people from other cultures. I do a lot of that, so I have read a lot in that direction. But yeah, Hazel, it's over to you. But that's
no, but I actually, Miss Angela, I'm also hearing a bit of a theme here because you also described reading that you did as a child, and then you went to find the experience, right? You went to the ballet of this person that you read so much about. You went to see the alpine flowers. Like there's a travel that there's a travel that happens when you're reading. And I've always wondered, you read stories about people who have been confined or are unable to travel or move or read, or and so that's like prison or illness or things that have you, and sometimes, and I think about being in that circumstance, and then, but hold on, I'm a reader. There's nothing that's going to keep me, like if I could read every day, all day, that might be a nice vacation, right? Horrible thing to say, but there's something about not
Get out
being
of your head, you get into a bigger space. You start to engage with things that you never thought possible or you never thought about before. Like I'll read a chapter and then I'll go back and think, did I really understand what I just read? I need to read it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read it again. All right. Or I have books that are highlighted and then I go in the back and I put page 34 and I write a comment about that because that struck a chord for me about something. So it's and I'm reading several books at once.
Always reading several. I actually have one I need to return to you as well that I haven't quite finished, but I'm almost there. So remind me, I have Yo by it was a Dominican author, so I have to bring that back to you. But thank you for that, Miss Angela, because that's such a diverse journey. It's a, you can tell. I also see that you've taken on a lot around human development and human thinking and psychology, and not from a psychological place, but from an understanding of humans' experience, the human experience. So you can see like there's a lot of biography, right? And a lot of real life that you're.
I want to live in a space where I give people space to be.
Yeah.
And I want to live so that people know I see them.
Mm-hmm.
And so through my reading, I find that I learned, this Anne Lamott, I read it again a couple of weeks ago because it's all about mercy and grace and giving people space. And when you think of the world in which we live right now, and she wrote it about 15 or 18 years ago, more than anything, we need to give people space and give people mercy and grace. So it's I read all sorts of stuff, and I read about post-polio since I have a polio issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. Prayer.
So that's a big deal for me. But I'm excited about it's. I deliberately ensure I don't spend my life scrolling through Facebook, looking to see what you had for supper.
Yeah. Got it. There's a substance that you're looking for in your reading, and you can see that there's a seeking there. And I know, Mom you have a really diverse reading life as well, right? And it's so funny because I asked Mom at some point, like, how do you choose your next book? Like, that was one of the questions I was going to ask her. She's like, don't ask me that. She's on the vibes. It's all about the vibes. So Hazel, tell us about your journey, your reading journey, and the rabbit holes that you might have been sucked down into.
Oh boy. Well, of course, like I said, I read everything. I read everything. I read right now I have a number of books I'm reading, but I'm just about finished this one. I think this is probably going to be like mirror writing, A Life Unburdened.
No, it's fine. I can see it.
The Swedish Art of Letting Go.
Oh.
Yeah. I have, of course, My Life Would Not Be Complete
without nursing.
I've
got good. I want to read that.
Winds that I'm about to start, and Sarah Maas, House of Flame and Shadow that I'm about to start. And I have
your Kindle. What's that?
With 672 books that are already read and 400 and something in my list to be read.
No, Mom, 400 and something on your TV.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That is of those
this is
that
not
are
even a want to
the
read
Kindle.
list, Miss Angela. That's not just a want to read list. That is the books that she hasn't read yet.
So I read like I said, I read just about everything, and something that people might find strange is that I've had a fascination with U-boats and in World War II.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was Carl. Carl introduced them to me when we were first married. And he got me started on that. And of course, segued into everything that Tom Clancy ever wrote.
Yep.
So when the towers were hit, I could go back to Tom Clancy because he had written his book about that. Everything that happens in war, Tom Clancy wrote about it at some point in time.
And espionage.
Um,
Hmm.
and so I love that kind of action and stuff. Work. I love romance, of course. You know, I've read everything that Nora Roberts has ever written. And I can't tell you who else. I recently rediscovered Catherine Stone and found a couple that
I love
I
her.
hadn't read that she had written. So I just finished one of those or two of those this week.
Hmm.
Um, I've I love on the spiritual side, I love Beth Moore's work.
Hmm.
If anybody's ever heard of Beth Moore, she does a lot of women's Bible studies, and I find those very uplifting, very helpful in my spiritual walk. I read Stephen King. I have read everything that J.D. Robb has written, which is Nora Roberts' mystery and things side. Two sets of books. Two, they weren't trilogies. I think one of them may have had six series, and one might have been a trilogy. That have has really fascinated me over the years was a series by Celeste de Blasi. Back,
Wild
I
Swan.
just realized that she died in 2001 because I've been wondering why is she writing anymore, but she died. And hers was a Swan trilogy, which
Hmm.
traced a young girl from her life on the Devon coast of England over to the very wealthy circles of the racehorse world in the U.S. And then Jean Auel did a series of six on called Earth's Children, which talk, which talks about prehistoric life, and it was again a young girl whose family died in an earthquake and she would have been like a Homo sapien, and she was taken in by the Homo erectus, um, one
Clan.
that of the people that they call the clan, and that was a fascinating series. Uh, Recently, I discovered Tessa Afshar, who does Bible based fiction. So she takes a character out of the Bible, for instance, Dorcas or Paul, or
Hmm.
one of somebody who's mentioned in the Bible, Esther, and it's usually women, and then she writes their story in a com- in contemporary language, but in that setting of wherever they were appearing during that time. Um, so I read everything. I read all of my orchid books. I read all of my crochet books. I do I read a lot on gardening. And one thing that I think we need to remember is that we're talking here about books, but there's so much else that
Hmm.
comes before us. Like I still get professional articles. I still follow a lot of what's happening in nursing in the world. I'm a big advocate for safe staffing for nurses. So I'm following that up, all the research on that. So I'm reading. I read every single day without fail. And if I start to read in the morning before I go outside to water my plants will dry for the day because it's unlikely that I'll get up. I need to get up, do all my chores, and then shower and go to the hammock with my books, or my day just goes to hell from the beginning. And it's it's just such a joy to be, and the thing is this is one of the things that drives a lot of my literacy initiatives. I mean, right now I'm getting ready to start to volunteer with Life. I volunteer with Jubilate to read for the kids, and it reading has enriched my life so thoroughly that I want to ensure that every child that comes into my orbit has that opportunity to travel, even if it's just in their mind's eye. My grandfather subscribed to National Geographic, and I remember when I was 9 years old, we spent a summer in Honduras with my mom's parents, and he sent me back home with a stack of National Geographic, and I devoured them. I loved everything that I read in those books, and they informed me so. The other thing that I love is Jamaican patois books.
She says
So
it like she says it like it's like
Miss
a
Lou. I
yes,
love Miss Lou's work,
Joan
and I
Andrea.
love Joan Andrea Hutchinson. I think I like her even more than Miss Lou. And so I really enjoy read, and I'll go back and read. That's the other thing I do. I go back and read books over and over again. Like you, there's a book called I Dared to Call Him Father by a Pakistani woman called Bilkis Sheikh. I know the book by heart. I have listened to it so many times, and it's about a Muslim woman's conversion to Christianity with no outside influence at all. And her walk, her spiritual walk following her conversion. Um, I used to read a lot of Rabbi Zacharias, but I was disappointed, so I don't do
They
him
break
very.
your heart, some of them. They
So
really break
ditch
your
that one,
heart.
okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
he
I
broke
feel
my
that way
heart.
about Osho because Osho disappointed me, but he really taught me a lot of things. So you got
But I did learn a lot, and I think we need to
no.
be aware of that. That the lily grows out of the mud of a pond. Eh?
Mm-hmm,
The water lily grows out of the mud of a pond,
mm-hmm.
and so
Yeah.
we can glean good from every situation if we
Yeah.
know how to look for it.
Mhm.
So my reading life is very, very rich, and not to talk about all of the children's books that I have to
Oh
read.
my goodness. Oh my goodness. But I am so glad that you all spent time with us because I have not even asked you half of the questions I wanted to ask because there's so much to talk about. There's so much to cover, and we have 2 minutes left. And I
Oh, you know about them.
should go back to these comments. Let's not take some comments. I have Miss Jan. Nell, remember when we used to exchange books when we were young? And this is one of the things that I love to hear about families because families
Oh, but this
were in
Alfred real.
families.
Yes.
This Alfred real. Because yes, I used
Alfred,
to
don't worry about that.
pages.
He'll have to reach out to you and reveal himself. But Connellan is saying those orchids are a lot of
I
fun.
mean,
Oh, they absolutely are. They're adorable.
And the Jamaican Papa book, she was clapping hands. Alfred says, Miss Hazel and I need to hang out. We have a lot in common. And me and Miss Angela can chill while having condensed milk sandwiches. But Jan also put me in my place and say, Annika, you don't have any time to read. You need to be crocheting my pink blanket. Now you need to join that line. But ladies, this has been such a rich conversation. We've Cayman has changed so much in your lifetime. It's changed so much in my lifetime, and then it had already changed so much by the time I came along and under your view, right? And what I really love about this is there is so much in your story about who we are as people and who we have always been as people with minds and curiosities and interests and aptitude. And I also hear so much about finding that sunlight through the leaves, right? Through like finding the books, finding the things to read, whether it is the back of the tomato soup can or what you said, what can it was you were telling me?
The
What's
soup can, the Campbell soup can.
No,
Campbell can?
it was a Libby's box that you got glasses in,
The
Yes,
lemon box
or it was the soap box that you got towels in.
and the
yeah.
National Geographics, and
National
just
And
Geographic,
the catalog. My mom
they
was
had
a
a catalog,
seamstress,
but
so we had the catalogs for her to
to get the patterns.
sew for people, right? So
oh yes, of course. I
I
would
had to
show
read
her
all of
what
them.
the dress and hair, and then she would use the chicken feed bag, the ones that didn't sell,
Exactly. To
and
make the
carry them,
dress.
and that's what I would get a little dress made from, because I like this one in the book. But it's as I listened to Hazel, and I thought, I put a smattering of books beside me with two bookshelves in there that are tight.
Oh
Mhm.
Um,
God.
yes, the Kindle is weeping. Um,
Mhm.
but reading transports me to a comfortable place.
Mhm.
Um, and
Mhm.
it's what I said about my children. It's like keeps me curious,
Mhm.
yet keeps me focused. And
Yes.
and
Mhm.
and today it was on my orchids.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I was sitting down today, going down the rabbit hole, because our ixorias that I don't think are blooming the way they should be blooming. So I was
Mhm.
into them today. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yet again, I picked up Black and Blues and read a couple chapters, because I'm just so taken up with where
Yeah.
she's going with this. So it's letting ourselves be open. And again, Hazel, there's something that you said. My last point is that I don't only read things that I like,
Mm-hmm.
but I read things because I want perspective.
And
So I
if I
want
start it, I can't not finish it.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so yeah, yeah, yeah.
because otherwise I will be in an echo chamber talking to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a beauty of not having the variety at the beginning too. I think it teaches us how to absorb information and still curate it, like choose it on purpose, like what stays. So ladies, I'm we're at time and a little bit over time, but I just wanted to thank you so much, because there is so much practical resilience and so much adventure in what you have shared with us this evening about your own experiences. But you are not only a reflection of readers, you're a reflection of Caymanian readers. You're not just a reflection of Caymanian readers, but Caymanian women. And it is such a unique story. And I'm so grateful for the time you spent with us this evening. And I'm really hoping that you will come back. And we'll get you guys on with Miss Joy Basdeo, who joined me
Woo-hoo.
earlier on in the
You would
year.
need 6 hours for us.
That's okay. We'll make it work. We'll make it an event. But thank you so much for being with us. And I am
Oh,
sure that
pleasure.
I'm gonna sit on one of your couches very soon with all of us together.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us. All righty.
Have
Thank
Good
a
you
night.
so much.
wonderful night, Cayman. We'll see you next week.
All right, sweetie.
Bye.